Well, hey, man,
Yeah.
it's all you.
All right.
Show me
Just
what you got.
taking the lead right
Do it.
now. Okay. Cool. Well, start from the beginning. Start from the womb, I guess. It's where all things begin. We won't take it back that far, but um yeah, I mean, so growing up, I grew up Catholic. My parents went to a Catholic church, and um I was involved in kind of like Bible study classes as a kid. It was called PSR. I don't remember what the acronym actually stands for, but I remember absolutely hating that time and being forced into these, classes with other kids on like weeknights after school and stuff. Um, and yeah, so it felt very forced from like a young age of,
Mm.
this is just what we do. Like we go to church on the weekends, then we have these classes like once a week. But that was it. We like, never read the Bible together, didn't really ever talk about God outside of mass and then these classes on weeknights. And so yeah, God definitely felt, very far and removed, and um, didn't, yeah, like I knew of Jesus, knew who he was, knew of like the Trinity, and um, heard about, Jesus like dying on the cross for our sins and things like that, but it didn't really hit me or mean much to me. I kind of just went on with my life. I remember, the extent to like my prayer life was really related to things that I wanted to see happen. So I've been a Browns fan my entire life.
Hoo,
And
hoo, hoo.
yeah. And I distinctly remember every Sunday holding like a rosary basically, and praying with that rosary in my hand that like the Browns would win. And that rarely
Do you
happened.
still do that, CJ?
No, I do not.
I feel like you
I,
do.
I definitely don't.
Go ahead.
I've matured in my faith
Okay,
since
okay.
then.
You got it.
But yeah, that was like the extent of my prayer life, was praying for the Browns, and they needed prayer back then for sure in the early to mid
Yeah.
2000s. Um, but yeah, that was kind of the extent of my knowledge, and I wouldn't call it a relationship with God at that point. Um, but it was very inconsistent, irregular, and yeah, not genuine. And then yeah, when I was around 8, 9, 10 years old, my parents got divorced, um, which was a really hard time for me. I was the only person in my school at that time that at least I knew of who had divorced parents. So felt really alone and isolated in that. Um, and just remember kind of like lashing out a little bit around Valentine's Day specifically, because that's when their wedding anniversary was. And so when that holiday came up, I was just angry.
Mm.
Would go to class and just, yeah, kind of pout and just be upset, and wouldn't really want to talk with anyone. And yeah, it just brought up a lot of emotions. And yeah, so that was tough. And then, once they were divorced, and was kind of, living in two different houses, bouncing back and forth between my mom's and my dad's, our church attendance was even less consistent. I mean, we probably went, at least a few times a month when they were together, and then after that, it kind of dwindled down to, holidays pretty much, maybe every once in a while, but pretty much we just go to church on, Christmas and Easter. And that was about it. So
Mm.
yeah, and that was kind of how it was all through middle school and high school, into college. I remember in high school there were like a couple times I'd go to, it was called Impact, which was basically like a Bible study in the mornings before classes started. And so a couple of my friends went to that, and I remember maybe attending once or twice just to check it out, but didn't really pursue anything after that. Yeah, but I remember, I mean, in high school, I struggled a lot. In middle school and high school, struggled a lot with mental health, specifically, and um, lacking self confidence. Was really critical of myself and really conscious of what other people thought of me. I've always been like a, slimmer, smaller guy, and that really bothered me. In those years of my life, and just the comments people would make, even if they weren't like directly hurtful, but just offhanded things that, showed me they were aware of like how skinny I was.
Mm.
I think especially when it came to, being interested in girls, that was something I was always worried about, was do they think I'm, too skinny, too small for what they want. So put a lot of weight in that, what other people thought of me, and girls specifically. And so yeah, I remember in high school getting, into working out more. And I mean, it really wasn't like for myself or to be healthy. It was really just to try to look better, to impress girls, basically. So yeah, just like a lot of unhealthy thoughts and habits that were built in middle school and high school, and that, like I said, kind of had an impact on my mental health too. Just getting to the point of having like suicidal thoughts and pretty, I guess, more severe depression, at least with how that the fact that it led to considering like ending my own life as early as in middle school, and that carried through to times in high school, and even into early college was still feeling that way. Just I think putting the vast majority of my value in what girls thought of me, and I didn't have a girlfriend in high school, and so that I think made me feel like I was worth less, not worthless, but worth less. And so I felt like if I didn't have this relationship that I coveted so much, it was like, why, like, what's the point of living, basically, was how extreme it got for me. So then graduated high school and started college at Ohio State. And high school was really easy for me academically. Like, I graduated co-salutatorian with one of my best friends, and my classes they never felt difficult. Like, took some more, I guess, advanced like AP classes. They were never that challenging for me. But then, going into college, it's definitely a step up. And I think for the first time really questioned like my intelligence too, and how smart I was, and if I could succeed with what I at the time thought I wanted to do for a career, which I thought I wanted to be a doctor. Quickly realized that was not the right path for me. But yeah, I remember putting a ton of pressure on myself to do well in these classes, especially with the end goal of becoming a doctor. And even getting a B on a test would send me spiraling, or I couldn't sleep like the night before taking tests, just because I knew how much it meant for my grade, and then my potential application for getting into medical school. That created just a new kind of stressor, I guess, in my life that I hadn't really had before. I think it was around that time, freshman year, like middle of my freshman year, where I started just thinking more holistically and deeply about things and life in general, and what kind of our purpose is, and what I want my life to look like, and what's important and what matters. And I think a lot of the reason I wanted to pursue being a doctor was because of the prestige that comes with that role and that title. And the financial benefits of being a doctor, and it wasn't really to care for people. It's definitely selfish motivation of I want this, so that I look good. I remember in high school there were people kind of encouraging me to pursue that, and it was some of them were girls that I liked at the time, and so I was like, okay, well, if I do this, like, maybe it won't be them that I end up with, but it'll be someone that sees the value in me being a doctor. Something like that. So yeah, so thankfully ended up deciding not to pursue that, because it would have been for wrong reasons, and I'm sure I would have absolutely hated medical school. And so changed my major in, I think it was the beginning of my sophomore year, and that kind of was part of like the chain of events that led to me learning about Jesus for who he truly was, and ultimately putting my faith in him. And I remember getting to like a pretty low point at the beginning of my sophomore year, and I'm trying to make sure I have the timing right. So it was like, yeah, it all kind of happened around the same time. So beginning of my sophomore year, was still taking classes for that I thought I would need for medical school. and just remember being really stressed for this. I think it was an organic chemistry test, which is like the weed out class that they have at Ohio State for med school. It's like if you can't pass that, it's you better you know you might as well not pursue medicine anymore. So I was really stressed for that. And then there was an organization that I was really excited about being a part of, Buckeyethon, which is a dance marathon. The whole concept started at Penn State, and then a lot of other schools adopted it over the years. But Buckeyethon raises money for children with cancer, specifically benefiting Nationwide Children's in Columbus. So it's something I was really excited about and interviewed for it, and felt like I totally bombed the interview. So I had that interview, and then I had my exam basically back to back the same day. Had the exam, felt like I did horrible on the exam. So I just remember afterwards just praying for probably the first time in a long time that mostly that the membership with Buckeyethon would work out, because I felt like I really needed that in my life. The community that I saw, the purpose of it, helping kids in the community was something I was really excited about, and felt like I was meant to be part of it. And but I knew I had a horrible interview, so I was like, I just need to pray about this because I don't feel like I have a chance. And yeah, I think I was praying about the exam too, just because I was super stressed and anxious about that. And then within a few days, I think this kind of happened either back to back or around the same time too. I got my test results back and ended up doing a lot better than I thought I would. And then found out that I got accepted into Buckeyethon, which was huge for me. I mean, some of my best friends from Ohio State were part of that organization. Still in touch with a decent amount of them today. So not only the impact that we got to have on our campus and the kids in the Columbus community, but also the impact it had on us. I mean, again, just a ton of great friendships and relationships and kind of leadership opportunities, things like that, that really set the course for the rest of my college career, but then also things that I became passionate about and want to pursue, going throughout my life now. So that was kind of like the catalyst, I feel like, for me just engaging more with God and faith. And not that, every time you pray, you're going to get exactly what you want. But I think God saw my heart and like why I wanted this. And I don't know exactly how it all worked out that I ended up getting into the organization, but I feel like God heard that prayer and answered it. And that was just like a really big deal for me. And so it wasn't too long after that, when I went home for Christmas break and was just more receptive and open to the idea of like going to church. And I remember sitting in my dad's kitchen, just kind of like journaling to myself, which I don't do that super often, or I definitely didn't at the time. But I remember my sister coming in, my stepsister walking in, and she just asked me kind of out of the blue if I wanted to go to church with her over the weekend, and I agreed. And I went to the service. It was at a church called Grace up in Northeast Ohio, non-denominational church, and it was leading up to Christmas. It was maybe a week or two before. So it was, focused on Jesus's coming, Jesus's incarnation. And it was really like the first time I heard the gospel for what it truly is, and the fact that, I'm a sinner. I've fallen short of God's glory and what he calls us to be, but that he still loves us so much that he wants to have a relationship with us, that he gave his son so that we could have that. And just the way it was explained and some of the worship music hit me like nothing had ever before. I just remember breaking down in tears, crying during the service, and leaving just wanting more. Then there was a Christmas Eve service the following week at the same church. Went to that with my sister and my whole family, and kind of the same deal. I was just like struck with the truth and the power of the gospel, and just couldn't control my emotions, just was bawling, and really felt God like pulling at my heart. My sister was very aware of what was happening to me at the time, and so that night we watched The Passion of the Christ together in my basement at my dad's house, and it was the same deal. We're just like kind of getting a visual representation of what was some what was shared in those services, and getting an idea of what Jesus' life may have been like when he was on earth and everything that he went through so that we could have a restored relationship with God. Again, kind of the same response and reaction of just being overwhelmed with, emotions that were mostly joyful, but like kind of feelings of like my own, like the heaviness of my own sin, and but then just a lightness of yeah, God's grace and the mercy and love that he has for us, and just being swept up in that. And so we watched that, and right after, my sister and I prayed, and was kind of the moment where I put my faith in Jesus for the first time. It was probably right around midnight, Christmas morning, Christmas Eve into Christmas Day, which was the timing that was kind of cool. And that was back in 2013. So it's just been more than 10 years now that I would consider myself a saved Christian. So yeah, that's exciting. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome, man. I think a couple things that I was thinking about when you were sharing even just like your high school struggles was
Mm-hmm.
how much other people's opinions
Mhm.
mattered,
Mm-hmm.
even to the point of like you're just doing everything for the wrong reason.
Mm-hmm.
It looks good on the outside, like going to be a doctor or
Yeah.
going to the gym,
Right.
and a lot of it was, female validation too. And
Mhm.
I wanted to say that because a lot of young men struggle with that. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking, dude, this sounds like me in high school, because I was really small. I didn't have a girlfriend.
Yeah.
I really desired one, but felt shame for not having one.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people can relate to that, and being too small or too big or whatever that could look like
Yeah.
in someone's life. And so, but even in college, you even recognize that, like, if I'm going to be a doctor, like, I'm going, like, not to really help people.
Mm-hmm.
That's before you even really knew the Lord, and the Lord gave you the Holy Spirit to convict you. It just kind of shows that we all have a conscience,
Yeah.
and we know, like, man, it's probably not a great idea. Like, my intentions are not
Definitely
good.
not pure.
They're not
Yeah.
pure. There's something going on there.
Yeah.
I think for you to recognize that even then was awesome. And then, just being able to go to church, with your stepsister, I think that was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Is she still, like, you guys talk about faith and stuff still, I'm
Mhm.
sure?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, not as much anymore. She lives down in South Carolina now. Her husband's in chiropractic school, and they just had a kid last year. So yeah, I mean, Tay and I visited her in the fall, Thanksgiving. We got to meet her baby for the first time, but yeah, we're not, as close or as just not as frequently in contact, I guess. But she, I mean, hands down had the biggest impact on my faith. Yeah, for the first, I guess, 5+ years of me being a Christian, and just walked through a lot with me. And she bought me my first Bible, which I still have today, and it's like the main one that I use to underline and highlight stuff. And yeah, she was awesome. She was a great example of what it looks like to follow Jesus and to pursue him wholeheartedly, and like lay down your life for him. She's done a lot of really cool things for his glory. And yeah, she's been a great example. And I look up to her and her husband is kind of role models for marriage too, because I definitely didn't have that growing up. Both my parents were married multiple times, and and I mean, from what I saw with my mom and my dad, it just wasn't, was not a healthy relationship. A lot of just like emotional abuse and things like that. And yeah, and so I did not have a good example of what marriage was supposed to be from my own parents. So having that in my sister has been a blessing for sure. And I think too, just seeing, I mean, this is one of the things I always think about when it comes to my testimony, is just how God ultimately used my parents' divorce, like, for his good and his glory. Not that he couldn't have used, someone else in my life to bring me to him, but the fact that it was my stepsister, that came from another marriage. I think just kind of speaks to like the redemptive power and that God has in people's lives of, using something that was really broken, like the worst situation that I dealt with growing up for sure. My parents splitting and then seeing, my dad date and ultimately remarry was really hard initially. But there has been a lot of good that's come from that. Like I have really positive relationships with my stepsisters and my stepmom, and then obviously God using my stepsister Emily to introduce me and lead me to Jesus. Yeah, it was like by far the biggest blessing that's come from that whole situation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. I like God does that. God uses things in our life that is we would want to throw away
Mm-hmm.
and never say that didn't even I want to forget about that. But he takes it and he actually uses that very thing to push us towards him.
Mm-hmm.
I always think about the cross. I think about the cross was a torture device and it was terrible. It was punishment. It was agonizing death.
Mm-hmm. And
God
like the most
used that.
embarrassing form of death.
Exactly.
Yeah,
humiliation to the being naked on a cross,
Mm-hmm.
God using that very thing to be the redemptive tool that he was going to use for humanity. So anyone who's listening who feels like their story, like it's not worth talking about, or there's, shameful things in their life, like God will use those very things to actually lead you closer to him, and you can learn from them. And those are trials that refine you and make you who you are today. And our situations and things that happen to us make us who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And then God shows you his Holy Spirit power through those things. So as far as where you're at, like now, because you put your faith in the Lord, you've been a follower for over 10 years, which is kind of wild to think about. Yeah. What are some of the things like that you still see come up in your life today that God's teaching you that you're like, man, I still need to grow more in my faith in these areas? What do you think?
Yeah, I think still just putting my hope in various things that the world has to offer. I think even, something like marriage, and, that goes back to kind of how I felt in middle school, high school, just wanting girls to notice me and find me attractive and not just physically, but other ways too. But caring a lot about what women in particular think about me. I think I've grown in that a lot over time, but there's still areas where I've struggled, like leading up to marriage and then being married. So my wife and I met in 2016 out in Colorado. We were part of H2O Church at Ohio State, and they had a summer leadership program out in Colorado that we both signed up for. Which, I mean, that's one of the best things I've ever done in my life, for sure, was that program. We were out in Colorado for 3 months in the summer, just working at a YMCA. The job itself was nothing special. I mean, a lot of people were either making food or housekeeping or doing laundry, setting up for events, that's what I did. It was probably the most cush of all the jobs that we had out there. But yeah, just the opportunity to grow in, our spiritual lives, but also grow in relationship with a lot of other believers. There were 50 or 60 of us from Ohio State that went out there that summer. And some of my closest friends still to this day were, those relationships started that summer. And that's also that's where Taylor, my wife, and I met. And we started dating that summer. And it was really easy at first, like, getting to know each other. I mean, we were part of the same team when we were out there, a team of like maybe 20 or so, 15 to 20. So we were, doing life together every single day. And then, in the dorms we stayed at, she and I would just hang out in the evenings and chat until like midnight, 1:00 every night before we went back to our rooms. And so it was like a pressure cooker for sure in terms of getting to know each other. Like, we got to know each other really well in a very short amount of time, where in like the real world, or if you're, back on a college campus, you're going to see them maybe a few times a week. If you're outside of college, you've graduated already, and maybe like once or twice a week that you see someone, if that. So the fact we were seeing each other every single day for multiple hours a day, like, we got to know each other deeply really quickly, just being intentional about the stuff we talk about, our goals, our hopes, our dreams, our fears, all that stuff, in a short amount of time. And started dating in July of that year, and then came back to campus in August and started our final year of school. It was my second senior year, her normal senior year. Um, and yeah, I just remember even at that point just kind of struggling with like comparing her to other women, physically, and you know, yeah, from a physical sense, from like a sense of humor standpoint, from yeah, personality, whatever it is, because she was the first girlfriend I ever had, and so I think it was really easy for me to waver and just question and wonder, you know, what else is out there, if there's, you know, something better that would be more satisfying for me in various areas. Um, and this is stuff she's aware of, by the way. She knows.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that kind of just messed with my head a lot, kind of that whole year. And even after that, when we graduated and I moved to Chicago for a year, really just, you know, a lot of doubts and questions, not really about her and her character. Like I never questioned that, and I've never really questioned that once since I've known her. She's got super strong character, but just some of those things that, like, you know, Hollywood or the world paint as, you know, what you'd want in like a woman or a partner. And um, yeah, and so I don't know, that was challenging really up up through the start of our marriage, and there's been points where I've still had thoughts like that at times. It's not as I guess like debilitating maybe as they were in the past. Um, but yeah, that's definitely something I've struggled with for a while. And I think, yeah, just the fact that she was the only girl I ever dated, ended up marrying her, and that probably doesn't happen super often. So I think it was easy to have a lot of those doubts and questions of like, okay, is this the person for me? Like, how do I know for sure? Um, and yeah, so I mean, I've had a ton of conversations with friends in college, and you know, people I trusted from like our time in Colorado, just to kind of process through some of that with. And one of the guys who was a pastor at H2O recommended just doing like a retreat, like a solo retreat, to kind of, you know, really just be intentional about processing and working through that stuff with God. And so just did like a day and a half retreat at a hotel, I think up in Worthington. Um, just me, God, and my Bible for like a day. And yeah, I was just praying a lot and reading the word about, you know, what I could kind of find about marriage, and what a woman of God is supposed to look like. And um, I think what really struck me the most, and I remember even writing this like when I proposed to her, um, was just how lined up her character is with the fruits of the Spirit. So you think patience, kindness, gentleness, um, you know, things like that, forbearance, just loving, merciful, all those things. And I was like, man, like she is every single one of those things.
Mm.
And in that moment, I was like, wow, I'd be making a pretty big mistake if I didn't marry a woman like this, where I have literally zero questions about who she is as a woman and her character and her love for God and her pursuit of Him, and just everything that she stands for. And so it was in that moment that I like decided, all right, I'm doing this, and felt like kind of a leap of faith for sure. But yeah, so that was either late January or early February of 2019, and then proposed at the end of February 2019. So I was like, okay, I'm making this decision. I'm getting a ring, and then proposed, and then we got married in October of that year. And we've been together for a little over 4 years now. Yeah, it's just crazy to see like how God kind of initiated that from the start, and then has carried it through to marriage, and now 4 years of marriage. And it definitely hasn't been easy all 4 of those years. It's been a lot of struggles, again, things that, you know, things that I struggled with while we were dating. Still some level of like comparison at times, and wishing there were things that were a little different, and you know, wishing like our senses of humor matched up more is probably the biggest thing that I've struggled with. But yeah, again, I think think just yeah, I don't know. I'm definitely motivated to have a long and healthy marriage after seeing, you know, what both my parents have kind of not had, I guess, in their lives, with both of them being married multiple times. And I don't like, yeah, I don't judge them for that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
again, there's a lot of good that's come from my step family. But I think still recognizing that's like not God's design. Like, we're meant to be with the person we marry for our entire lives. And I definitely want to, yeah, I'm motivated to like break that stronghold from my family. Kind of like that generational sin of divorce. And um, yeah, want to be as loving as I can to my wife, and yeah, endure through the hard things and the trials that are guaranteed to come. They definitely already have, and I know they'll continue to. And I think the biggest thing is for us to continue to forgive each other, and trying to live as selflessly as we can, which that can be hard too. I mean, there's definitely been a ton of moments where I've wanted to be selfish with my time or my food, even like not wanting to share like desserts and things like that with her and whatever it is. But yeah, again, like I'm encouraged by other relationships I've seen in my family now, with my stepsister Emily and her husband, and can lean on, you know, relationships like that and other friendships we have, that I think just encouraging each other to, you know, when times do get hard, to remember like why we married each other in the first place. But then also like that it's so much bigger than just our, you know, short-term happiness, that it's character building and fortifying, and it's emblematic of what God's done for us. And yeah, how he's, you know, he's endured and he's sacrificed. And I mean, yeah, we're called to, like, men in the relationship are called to basically be Jesus and like lay down their lives for their wives, which is a huge calling to have on you, and is pretty impossible to do. Like, thankfully Jesus did it perfectly well, because we can't. But um, yeah, I think just that, yeah, that we're called to live that way and be those type of people to our spouses. But
Sure.
yeah,
Hey, man, you took us to school on the love notes there, man. I love it.
no expert by any
Hey,
means, but
you got experience though. 4 years,
well,
man.
yeah.
At least that's not bad. So we appreciate the honesty and the relationship aspects, and just kind of what you've struggled with, and are still coming to God to for help, right? And seeing that, do you feel like what do you feel like your future is looking like, as far as like your relationship with the Lord and your marriage, and where do you see yourself, and where do you see God taking you?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like the last couple years have been harder for me spiritually, I'd say, than maybe in the past. I think since owning a house specifically, it's been really easy to get caught up in all that, and just like, you know, kind of my own little kingdom, so to say, of the responsibilities and trying to keep it in order, and, you know, knowing that we don't want to live there long term. And so in the back of my mind, I'm always, not even the back of my mind, it's pretty towards the front of my mind, thinking about like the financial aspect of it, of like, okay, we got to keep things in order and like presentable, and I don't want anything to break in the next few years, and, you know, worrying that that's going to impact like the value of my house and stuff. So yeah, I think that's taken up like too much of my headspace, I guess, and focused too much of my time and energy on that, and putting a lot of hope in that the last couple years. And I think, yeah, I mean, my biggest fear with owning a house was having like a catastrophic event, like a pipe bursting, something like that happening.
Like something actually that did
like
happen.
something that happened. And I think, I mean, looking back on it, well, even like the day after it happened, I was like, man, I feel like that almost needed to happen, because I was putting so much hope in this, and was living in so much fear of something like that happening, that it was just like paralyzing me. And then when it did happen, I mean, it sucked in the moment. It was terrible. And like, I, I felt like in the moment that like my world was crashing, but,
Still in one piece.
still here. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, like even the next day I felt kind of at peace with it. I was like, man, this seems like it needed to happen just so I could get through it, rather than dwelling on what could happen for years. And that, I mean, it caused me a ton of anxiety just thinking about like the what ifs. Um, and so I feel like it was better that it happened and I could rely on God to like, yeah, get us through it. And I mean, it wasn't as bad as I think I imagined in my mind. Like, thank God for insurance, honestly, because that we probably would have been pretty screwed if we didn't have insurance. I mean, obviously, every homeowner needs insurance. You hope you don't need to use it, but when you do need to, it's like a blessing for sure. Yeah, and I think so. That whole event has definitely grown me in a lot of ways, and I think in part is putting less hope and value in our house, and knowing that it's not just about the financial like turnaround from it either. We want it to be a place where we can invite other people in to do life and host and serve. And so my wife's been a good reminder to me about that, because there are still times where it's easy for me to waver from that and worry about like what our little niece is doing to our house, if she's drawing on the walls or scratching things up or muddying things. And I think just growing in recognition that our house isn't everything, and we want it to be a home, not just a physical space. We want it to be a place that people feel at peace and are resting in and feel welcomed and feel loved in. So, I think that's something that I have grown in a bit and can continue to grow in, and I think I have and will.
By the way, I think that you have made your house a home from the times I've been over there, and the parties, the New Year's. It's like an annual thing that you have every year, and you couldn't have it the one year because of the pipe burst.
That's exactly right.
But other than that, I've always felt like it is a home.
Yeah.
That's welcoming, and had Sabbath meals there and all those things. So that's awesome, man. And I hope that it continues to be that way.
Definitely.
We were talking earlier about a good word, and I was like, man, I want to use that. Like, that's actually really good.
Yeah.
What do you have for the people? What's a good word?
People.
For the people right
Yeah.
there.
Right there.
Oh.
I would say, I mean, the word itself is vulnerability. Say that there is power in vulnerability. And I definitely did not believe that growing up, and like, kind of until I became a Christian. I felt like vulnerability was a sign of weakness. I think that's kind of how a lot of, people, men my age specifically, grew up, with the dads that they had. And, that whenever that started, progressed for a long time through at least the generation before us of, concealing your emotions, not sharing how you feel with other people, just, manning up and toughening it out. And I think, I believed that and lived that, and realized that it's not a healthy way to live at all. Part of that was, those, I mean, again, it's what you kind of grow up in, but then it's what you see like at school and high school too, of, the guys just, being tough and not wanting to show how they feel, or not let anything affect them.
They want to look cool.
Yeah. So it's easy to fall into, that temptation of just like fitting in that way. And if I show emotion, people are going to, laugh, make fun of me, think I'm weak, whatever. I think since becoming a Christian, have definitely, seen just the power of being vulnerable and opening yourself up, honestly, genuinely, not being afraid to share who you are, both the good and the bad, and what's happened in your past, and things that, maybe you would have done differently, but at the same time, you know, you've grown from them, and I think sharing with other people about struggles that you have definitely opens the door for them to share in that way too. And you know, someone has to kind of step out and take the lead in doing that to show other people that it's okay, and that yeah, that they can be honest, that they don't have to be ashamed of, you know, something that's happened in the past, or they don't have to hold on to that guilt. Yeah, I think just being able to express, you know, the things that you struggle with, and yeah, is important. It creates trust between other people too, and just like a camaraderie, and yeah, it builds fellowship, and it builds, I think, character too, of just yeah, just, you know, recognizing that we're not perfect at all, and that we're not, you know, God created one perfect person, and that was Jesus. And so we don't have to, you know, hide and conceal all these things that yeah, maybe we feel shame about, that we can bring them into light, and that ultimately there's healing and freedom in doing that. And yeah, I think that's the word I have for the people, is be vulnerable. It can be, you know, it can be scary, but I think a lot of times people, you know, are very receptive to that and will meet you there. And then again, like I said, it makes them feel more comfortable in sharing about, you know, things that maybe they've been holding on to for a long time as well. Yeah.
That's what this show is about, my
Yeah,
guy.
man. Yeah.
So I appreciate you coming on and sharing and being vulnerable.
Absolutely.
And appreciate you for watching and listening. If you're listening on podcast, please give a rating and review. It means a lot. And then if you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe. And we appreciate you. We hope this blessed your day. God bless.